So I'm Jordan. Sorry. I'm a current, well, now, as of like 2 days ago, a fourth year at Einstein. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Cordova, who will be speaking tonight about adaptive sports. So she is a sports medicine fellow here at Montefiore Einstein and also did her residency here as well. And most importantly, her intramural basketball team here recently won the championships a few weeks ago. So with that, I will hand it over. And if anybody has any questions they want to write in the chat, I'll be checking.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jordan, for that introduction. And yeah, we just won championships in the intramural, so good on us. Before I share my screen, I just want to say that I'm very grateful to be here today. I'm very much into PM&R and adaptive sports. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Hopefully you'll get some sense of what adaptive sports are, and hopefully you get to like it as well a little bit. So let me share my screen. I am no expert specifically of adaptive sports. I'm a very enthusiastic physician in adaptive sports. I have some experience. And I want to share that with you today. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So let's. Okay, so this is adaptive sports. It's an introduction. We're not going to go into full detail. I hope you get to understand what adaptive sports are, and hopefully how to get involved. So we're going to go through some definitions. I'm going to tell you a brief history of what adaptive sports are. Then we're going to talk about the risk and benefits of adaptive sports and how to get adaptive sports into your patient's life and anyone that you know also involved. And the most important part, how to be part of it and how to get involved. So, definitions. So here's a very brief summary of the World Health Organization to being physically active. So moving is important. Every movement counts. That's what the WHO tries to get to all of us. Let's be active. But what does being active mean? So physical activity is not the same as exercise, as therapeutic exercises you're going to learn through PM&R. And it's different from sports, and I'll show you how adaptive sports are different from this. So physical activity is any movement, any action that we do. Doesn't need to have any organized thought or any time, a specific time, or you don't need more people. It's just being more active. It's like when you take that decision of using the stairs instead of going through the elevator. So physical activity just takes you out of this sedentary time. It just moves you to just move, okay? Then we go to exercise, which is a type of physical activity. Exercise requires to be scheduled, to be organized, and to have a purpose. Sometimes, depending on who you talk to, it'll need to be supervised by someone. So that could be athletic trainer, a coach, it could be a physician, that's someone that's guiding you through these exercises. And that's where we get to the point of those 150 minutes or hopefully 300 minutes per week of being physically active. This is an exercise, is a physical activity with purpose. So it's actually doing exercise. So it's not just moving anymore. This 150 minutes that you've heard, this is what you need to be active, to consider to be active, to be healthy active, is exercise. Then we have the therapeutic exercises. Therapeutic exercises are guided by a therapist, either a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, or an athletic trainer. It's when you're recovering. It's more related to the rehabilitation of a musculoskeletal system. So it actually has other guidelines, other goals than just the exercise for health. And then we have sports. Sports are an organized way of exercise. It has a competition as a goal, and it requires more people to organize, so not just one or two. It actually requires a whole institution of sports. It requires rules to be fair and to follow so that someone can win. And then we have adaptive sports. And adaptive sports have a very specific definition. So adaptive sports are any modification of a given sport to accommodate the varying abilities, levels of an individual with disability. It can be recreational or competitive sports for people with disabilities, and it allows for able-bodied, so people without disabilities, and their sports, the modifications, and a classification system for the type of disability, providing fair competition. So what does this all mean? Adaptive sports mean that the sports that we know can be modified so that people that has any different ability can participate. Let's say there is the regular soccer. We all know the 11-to-11 soccer, we know the soccer field, and we know the rules that they have. Well, there's actually a soccer that is for blind people that has some modifications. There's less people per field. The field is closed, so nobody can get in, and they have like walls so that people don't run over the field. And the ball has a bell so that the people that are blind playing, they follow the ringing of the ball. They are actually not seeing the ball. So those are modifications that we can make. And there are easy modifications you can do, for example, for amputees, so that they can run, they can change the type of prosthesis that they are using to run. So those are the modifications and the accommodations that you can get, little changes in the rules and some modifications on the field and on the things that you need to participate. For example, wheelchair racing. You're not actually running on the track, you're wheeling on the track, but that is an accommodation because those people cannot use their legs. And we're going to see some pictures so that you can get this more into your mind on how does these modifications, accommodations work. And then there is these ability levels. So not everyone with a difficulty of their movement or their musculoskeletal system or their neurological system will have the same limitations. It varies. It depends on whether if they're an amputee, it depends if they are having cerebral palsy or they had a stroke, if they were born without a limb. So those are all different, and that's why they created the classification system. To allow all these different abilities to participate in the different sports and provide a fair competition. Now, the only thing that I would add to this is adaptive sports currently are not just modifications or accommodations to sports that already exist. There are also sports that have been created for people with disability, like goalball or boccia. And why sports? So we understand now that there is movement, there is physical activity, there is exercise, there's sports, and there's adaptive sports. So why wouldn't we just do adaptive exercise? Why adaptive sports? And this is more of my thought. I think sports are important to what they bring to the person who practices the sport and everyone around it. And we can summarize this into the Olympic and the Paralympic movement. Or what it's called the Olympism and the Olympic movement, and the agitus movement in Paralympics. With agitus means movement or motion. In the Olympic movement, we're everyone who participates on the Olympics and that they follow the Olympism, they're thriving for excellence, for respect, and for friendship. And this is something that it's valued during the games and throughout the 4 years, which is the Olympic year, where athletes are not just valued by the gold medals that they get or every first place, but also in how they behave and how they are with the other athletes, and how much they demonstrate that they're not just good athletes, but they're also good people, and that they're someone that could be model, that people could follow. So I think uh, those adds value to just doing exercises. And then on the Paralympic movement, this is also much more important, because this is not just people that have a life of just trying to be the best, being the situs altus fortus, so who gets faster or who can jump higher or who can be stronger. It's not just about that. It's about how do you get to that by dealing with the different impairments that you have. So it brings a whole other side of the values of sports. It brings courage to be there because you're actually different. It brings determination because you were told that you could not do sports ever because you're blind, or you couldn't do sports because you can't walk. And then you do sports, right? Or because you were so fragile, because you were a kid with osteogenics imperfecta and you could break, but you're still doing sports. So that requires determination, and you also inspire others that are different, that have difficulties, that need to use their wheelchairs every day to move for transport, to learn that they can actually do it, that they can be independent, that they can continue to follow dreams, that they can work. So it adds that, and also it puts everyone into an equality movement, that we all should be able to dream, we all should be able to practice sports, to be healthy and to build on our community. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why it is adaptive sports and it's not adaptive exercise. We want to bring this extra into the people with disability being active. So a little history of what adaptive sports are. I apologize in advance for how the timeline kind of looked at, but I wanted to add some of the PM&R important things here as well. So back in the days, in 1894, a person called Pierre de Coubertin in France decided that the all Olympic Games that happened back way in Greece should come back, and that sports, because of all of these values that I was just telling you before, we're going to make a better world. They'll bring more humanism, and it'll bring everyone together. So he decided to create the International Olympic Committee. And finally, they had the first Olympic Games of the modern era in Athens in 2 years after that. And this is how the modern era of the Olympics came to be and decided to be every 4 years. But up until then, and many years after, people with disability was still like hiding kind of thing. Like people would not talk about it. There were not any accessible buildings up until 1933, with when the White House for the first time had wheelchair access, and then slowly but surely, some of the American associations for people with disabilities start to happen. And a lot of that was secondary to the world wars, especially after the Second World War, because of there were so many casualties of young people that the countries couldn't just have them not doing anything. We needed to rehab these people, and this is how it goes hand in hand with the development of physical medicine and rehabilitation, where it gets stronger, because now we need these people who's been studying amputees, who's been studying spinal cord injuries, to rehab these veterans from war and trying to get them to be active again and to go back into work. And this is how back in the UK, Sir Ludwig Guttmann arrived to Stoke Mandeville, um, running away from Germany. He was a neurosurgeon and was allowed to work in the UK with some veterans from war. And he started treating spinal cord injury veterans, and he decided that it was actually better for them to engage into some kind of a sports for their mental health. And because he also saw that by moving, it would prevent ulcers and pressure injuries, and would have people being more active, infections would get better. So he started trying with arch and bow. He started playing basketball on the wheelchairs, and people started getting better. So he decided 4 years after that to do the first Stoke Mandeville Games, and this is the origin of the Paralympic Games. This is the first time that people with disability would get together to try some archery on the wheelchair, and this opened up a whole new world for people with disability. Later in the US, Adaptive Sports USA was created. It's one of the organizations at the national level who would try to get veterans better and other people who were not veterans to get more active. And then in 1960, the first Paralympic Games that were organized, recognized by the International Olympic Committee, had place in Rome with 400 athletes and 23 countries. This is after a few Stoke Mandeville Games. And after that, the impact of adaptive sports increased by having different national entities, and then also the Rehabilitation Act in 1973. So you can see everything pretty recently, and then it just boomed. Within the last 40 years, we've had in 1988 the first time that the summer Olympic and Paralympic Games happen at the same place in Seoul. And it's important because they were using the same venues. The same Olympic Village was for able-bodied and for disabled athletes. And that means that people had to thought into making everything accessible. So it's a big impact into what you leave behind of Olympic Games and their organization and the impact in the community. In 1990, there is the Americans with Disability Act that changes all of the American laws into making every building accessible and accommodations for people to work and participate in sports. And this brings a huge impact into physical medicine and rehabilitation to be able to treat their patients in a better way, and also to allow people with disability to go back to work with better accommodations. The International Paralympic Committee was created just 1 year before that, and ever since they've been organizing the events that happen every 4 years, always like about a month after the Olympic Games, but they use the same venues and the same village. So fast forward, we go to London. There is already 4,000 athletes and 164 countries. If we compare that to Rome on 1960, which was 400 athletes and 24 countries, it's a big impact. And then even just recently in Tokyo, we have again 4,000 athletes in 160 countries. So there were some restrictions coming from the COVID situation, but also very, very important. So, risk and benefits. We all know the benefits, right? So if people is active, they're going to be more healthy. We're going to reduce the risk of morbidity and mortality. So we want people to be active and not just to be sedentary. If you can imagine, we usually think sedentary is someone sitting. So how about all these people that has amputations, spinal cord injury, severe strokes, that they cannot walk in their wheelchair depending, or kids that had cerebral palsy and they're never going to walk, so they're always going to be in a wheelchair, or they have any neuromuscular disease, that eventually they're going to get into a wheelchair, or adults that have multiple sclerosis or any other neurodegenerative diseases that are going to end up on a wheelchair. Doesn't mean that they are destined to be sedentary. That's not the point, right? They will still benefit into being active as much as they can to prevent from the common problems like cardiovascular problems, but also things that are particular to their different disabilities, to be able to have a better lungs and pulmonary function, to clear their cough, and to be able to breathe more comfortable, to have stronger muscles, to sit properly in the chair, to have the strength to be able to accommodate on the chair, or the strength enough or coordination enough in their hands to be able to utilize a joystick and an electric wheelchair, so that they can have pressure relief on their back, on their buttock, and prevent from ulcers to happen. And even if they can walk a little, then we can prevent from deep vein thrombosis and things like that. So moving is essential. They will get the same benefits as people that are able-bodied, but they will also get more benefits compared to other people that is also disabled that are not moving. There are also risks. The risk of the sports themselves. So there is the risk of falling and a lot of different musculoskeletal injuries. They will get same musculoskeletal injuries that people that are able-bodied, just with the difference that if you're on a wheelchair, you're not going to get that much lower extremity sprains or fractures. You're actually going to get more upper extremity problems, but you can also get fatigue. You can get dehydrated. You can just have difficulty not with the sport itself, but with the transfer. So from one wheelchair to the other, and you can have mental health problems as well. This is people that have already gone through a lot of issues, and now you're putting on that any rules, pressure, and their own goals to obtain medals, or if it's recreational, just to do better. So there is also a great impact into mental health as a risk, but also as a benefit, big impact and benefit, because now they belong. There is a huge impact in community, and the sense of independence, and noticing that they can be more active and go back into the community without being afraid of their differences and their own limitations. So, and this is where I want to highlight the risk and the benefits. For all of you that are very much interested in PM&R, if anything gets from my talk that is going to be sport related, or anything like that someone's going to ask you, is this difference between impairment, disability, and handicap. And I think this is where the risk and the benefits of adaptive sports are more important, because impairment is a specific structural or function limitation. So if that patient had a stroke and they have a foot drop, that foot drop is the impairment, okay? Because they can't lift their foot. Now, the disability is related to the environment. So if they're sitting, there's not much of a problem because they're not walking, and that foot drop is not going to limit them. And but if they're walking and there's a lot of stairs, then they're not going to be able to clear the foot. And so now they're going to have a big disadvantage, and it's going to become, that impairment is going to become a disability, because they're not going to be able to go up the stairs. Now, handicap is their role in life. So if going up and down stairs was their job, because they were a janitor, or if they are a secretary, or they needed to go to the subway every day to go to work, and now they can go up and down the stairs, now they handicap, because now they cannot work. They lose their role in life, that social component. And this is where sports make the biggest impact in people with disability, because they are at increased risk of cardiometabolic diseases and obesity. So we know that movement will help them with this. But they're also more likely to experience social isolation, loneliness, and they have significant and very different barriers to participate in sports. And they get the same positive health outcomes by being active. So what is the downside of trying to be active? Not much. It's the same as any able-bodied person, but we can make that difference into that impairment becoming into disability, becoming into being handicapped, if we give them the tools to have a role in life and to be more independent, and then also the tools and the modification in the environment so they can easily traverse through their community. So it's just the impairment now. It's not actually a disability or not a handicap. So physical rehabilitation can be achieved via adaptive sports and adaptive activities. And this is why a lot of hospitals have their recreational therapists within their inpatient rehabilitation system, because they can teach you in a fun way how to use their wheelchair, how to use their prosthesis, and how to be more active, and then engage them into these activities when they leave the hospital and they follow as an outpatient, and they do better. And also adaptive sports participation correlates with a positive self-identity. It reduces anxiety, reduces depression, improves social integration, life satisfaction, and increases the likelihood of employment. So that impairment doesn't become a disability, and it doesn't necessarily become being handicapped. So this is what we're talking here. We're no longer going to exclude them, and we're not going to talk about we're not going to talk about them. We're not going to segregate them into like a different role, that those are other people that need totally different things, and we're not going to have them just integrated, sort of like, okay, we're going to put just ramps in the buildings, ramps that don't actually quite fit into how the wheelchair is managed, but we're going to put it because the law says that we need to put them here. Or we're going to build an elevator that doesn't fit any wheelchair, it doesn't really work. Or we're not going to have medical tables, like to see your patients and on the hospital, that don't actually allow for any accommodation to transfer from a wheelchair to the table. So then you end up just examining them on the wheelchair. Or even worse, that the doors are not wide enough for a wheelchair to go through. So that is inclusion, that we want them to be part of us, and we want them to give them the tools within the environment so that that impairment doesn't become a disability. And the sports will give them that independence and that role in social life and those skills to actually prevent them from being handicapped. So these are some pictures that I want to show you regarding how would this happen. So up here on the corner left, you have goalball. This is a sports that it was created just for blind people. So there's two teams, and the ball as well has a ring, and the whole stadium has to be quiet, and they just try to grab the ball by just following the sound and trying to score into the net and the goal that you can see on the back. So you can imagine that there can also be a lot of injuries there, because they can just smash into each other. Then you have bocce here on the right side of the screen. This is the regular bocce with the different balls and their colors, and you need to be the closer to the white ball. But this is for people with cerebral palsy or any neurodegenerative disease, so that they have muscle strength impairment or coordination, to the point that even a person that can only move their head can participate with this, like slides or romps, if you can see here, and they can just push the ball with their head or their tongue to calculate how much of a effort or strength they have to do for the ball to arrive near the closest to the white ball. And people with many different levels can participate, because also if you still have like upper extremities control, even if you have problems with coordination, you can try to throw that ball. And that's where classification system enters, because it's not the same someone that only uses their head and someone that can use at least one of their arms. Can be fairly competitive. Now in the lower pictures, you can see modifications for alpine ski, and with a double amputee on sitting. You see what is called a slashed hockey or adaptive hockey, where they're all onto one sledge, and you can't really tell where are the differences that they have, or even if there is any able body within them. Probably not, because it is Beijing Paralympics. But it's one of the cool things of adaptive sports that anyone can actually participate. So it's way more inclusive on those aspects, because even if you can use your legs, you would be on the same sledge, and then you will be tied and you can use your legs, so you will be on a fair competition. And then on further right, on the lower side, you can even see that table tennis is one of the sports that have one of the biggest spectrum of participation and classification system, to the point that even someone without arms can play, and they just hold their a palette with just the mouth. So it's very impressive to see this different sports. I have here some other pictures, so you can see archery. Again, no arms. He's throwing it with his mouth and controlling it with the feet, which is just incredible. That's how he also drives. You can see the wheelchair basketball team, where there is people that are amputees, cerebral palsy, spinal cord injuries, so many different impairments that are together in this sport. You can see how happy they are. They won, so it's very competitive. This is not just, oh, okay, poor people, we're gonna give them a ball so they can have fun. No, this is very competitive, and they want to do better. And there is this classification system to allow for fairness. So anyone who can use their whole trunk, so they can move the chair with their trunk, will have a difference with someone that cannot use their trunk and they only have their arms. So they can't really move their wheelchair with the trunk, and they have less stability, so it's going to be hard for them to try to go grab the ball from the floor. And that way everyone has a different score in their different sports, and there's a way to sum up those scores to make it equal and have all these different abilities being more fair within the same game. You can see here in the swimming team from Australia, also amputees, short stature, albinism, that have different conditions that are working together as one, and then they have all these different competitions. There's also people without bilateral amputees or limb loss, or they can move their arms, who do compete on swimming, and you're like, how do they do it? Well, they can. So it is possible. There are many possibilities to get involved into being active. Throwing, jumping, even now, talking a little bit more of being inclusive. This on the Tokyo Paralympic Games was the first time that there was a universal 400 relay. So we have someone on a wheelchair who is a spinal cord injury. Yeah, I think spinal cord cerebral palsy. My apologies if one of those. He's has some level of blindness. We have coordination impairment, and then we also have a Erb's palsy, so she can't really move her arm as normal as someone without any nerve injury to that arm. So it acts more functionally as an amputee arm. So they all did the relay, and it was the first time ever, and USA did great on that. There's amputee soccer down there, which requires for the players on the field to have lower extremity amputations, and the goalie has to have an upper extremity amputation, and nobody can use a prosthesis. We have curling, even like more extreme sports now are people are doing on a wheelchair and being more active. And as I was saying before, soccer for blind people. So a lot of interesting things. And those are all examples more into the professional, competitive, elite athletes. But this also happens recreational to adaptive dancing, adaptive Zumba. And the point is, how do we do that so that it works for life? So people does get involved into adaptive sports. So the World Health Organization thinks that if you're the youngest that you get involved into being physically active, the most likely that you will continue to be physically active in your adult times and prevent any risk of health diseases, and you will have lower rates of morbidity and mortality from cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So what do I want to say here? The earliest we start with adaptive sports in people with disabilities, the more likely that they will continue to be active in their future, and the lower risk that they will have to develop any diseases. So this goes for able and disabled body. This is for everyone. So what can we do? There are different models of different countries that have been doing things. There's nothing well established in the US. There's not like a national way on how to do this. But I have here two examples, one from Canada and one from my own country, from Chile, who they've been trying to build early interventions into kids with disabilities so that they can get involved into sports early, so that they can continue to be active as they grow and they get involved into their communities. So this is the Canadian model, which is to build up on physical literacy. What that means is the knowledge of how movement works and how movement affects your body, and how well you understand your skills and your physical capacity. So it's like when people say, once you learn to ride a bike, then you'll always know how to ride a bike. Doesn't matter how many years you spend without riding one. So this is the idea, that you teach people how to use their body so that they don't forget, and they can get learning other sports using those abilities, and hopefully continue to be active over time. And not everyone has to be an elite athlete, but it's something that can happen. So they start with early fundamentals training, the education of importance of being active, the awareness of the different activities they can do and how this affects their health, and then train just to train, or train to compete, train to win. If they're getting better and they're getting more competitive, then well, they can follow that path, or they can just stay active for life. And then this is in Spanish, but this is almost the same concept shown in a different way from Chile, from our national rehabilitation system, which is also the same here. The small circle shows which is a therapeutic exercise, and then how everyone goes into a sports school where they teach them adaptive sports. And if they want to compete, then we go into the biggest circle and we teach them more competitive sports. And if they are very good, then they'll go into the bigger semicircle into elite Paralympic sports. So the athlete itself is not enough. As you saw, we need to have more things surrounding the athlete or the patient to be active. And this is not just the thought of the family and the doctor and the nutritionist and the psychologist and the friends and the school. This is bigger than that. So this is how fans bring money. They are bringing changes into law and public institutions, how this actually affects how sports federations are made, and how sports can influence into the community is a big, huge impact that the USA team decided to change their Olympic committee, decided to change their name from Olympic Committee to Olympic and Paralympic Committee. There is inclusion. That means a lot to the 15% of people that lives with disability. That brings people together. That brings awareness into the industries. That brings awareness into the politicians, and we can make changes. So this is something big and huge. This is something for you to think about it later when you go to bed, and every time you go to any rotation, you'll think, oh, has a huge impact. It's not just telling my patient right here, right now, that they can be active. This can really change how we see society. So I wanted to share this with you. More of a summary. I hope it works. Maybe not. I guess not. I have it open later, so if we have time, we can watch it later. But it was a summary of how having an injury, going into rehabilitation, getting adaptive sports involved will allow you to hopefully go back into your previous life or something better than that, but hopefully not worse than that. So how to get involved? Very important. This is the most important part. So numbers make more of an idea, and I think numbers here are a huge impact. So 82% of adults that are told to be active will be active if a physician tells them to be active. 82%. So 8 out of 10 that come to your clinic, and usually clinics had at least 20. So there you go, like a lot of people. But only 44% are actually instructed to be active. And this is just active. This is not doing exercises. This is not doing sports, just being active. So decide to take that stairs, decide to roll your wheelchair instead of just taking the bus. So there is a mission to us as physicians, as to you as medical students, to get it into your mind. People needs to be told to be active, and we're not doing it. They will do it if we tell them, but we're not doing it. So we need to get into that. And you need to ask every people that goes through your door in your clinics gets the benefits of being active, just being active. More if they exercise, even more if they're disabled, if they're doing adaptive sports. So ask them, do you know about adaptive sports? Are you being active? Let's start from the beginning. Are you active? Are you doing any exercises? Do you want to get involved into adaptive sports? What adaptive sports have you tried? Do you know where you can do adaptive sports? And have the answers to those questions. So you need to be the change. You need to be conscious that this is happening, that this is an option for your patients, that it's an option for everyone. As I said, able and disabled body can participate in adaptive sports. This is way more inclusive than regular sports. So you can actually get involved. You can volunteer. You can help as a volunteer to all of these different sports and be there to help them with the transfers, with safety, and with participation, because you need 5-on-5 people in a wheelchair to do basketball in a wheelchair. So if you jump on a wheelchair as well, you're actually participating, being involved, and you need to prescribe sports also in the future as a sport. We can start with physical activity. We can continue with exercises, and hopefully we move up into sports. So here's some examples of what we do here at Montefiore. This is our association with Achilles International. That's the biggest nonprofit organization for people with disabilities that do running, and now also hand cycling. So we have weekly hand cycle in a park nearby our hospital, free to everyone in the community and our patients and volunteers. We help them with transfer, we help them with safety for new learners. So it's very, very fun. People with many different disabilities come to our clinics. We also try virtual adaptive sports like adaptive boxing, adaptive yoga, adaptive Zumba, adaptive fitness. Here also another one from our Einstein student being a guide for a blind athlete who comes to our weekly hand cycle. The blind people need a pilot to go in front to see what's going on and to accelerate and everything. So if she wants to ride, she needs someone else to ride. So volunteers are very, very important. Adaptive boxing, adaptive tennis, adaptive pickleball is as cool now as it is for able bodies. Adaptive fitness, and this is just basically my summary. There is a reality of huge inequalities in life. Being equal doesn't mean that you can give the same thing to everyone, because it doesn't signify the same thing. Now, if you think of equity, you can try to adjust that, but it's still not going to be fair. Fair it is that everyone has the same access, and we're part of that. We can allow for that fairness to happen. So, ready to go. I hope I give you a little interest in adaptive sports and to get involved. And thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Dr. Cordova. Thank you so much. I was curious, given all of the special needs that, some of these disabled athletes have, would you say it's common for disabled or athletes with disabilities to have, PM&R physicians or even PM&R physicians specifically in sports to be like their PCPs?
That's a very good question. Thank you. I think, and this is a personal opinion, that PM&R doctors are the better trained to take care of adaptive athletes. We are trained in their specific impairments. We know better what happens with spinal cord injuries, what happens with amputees, what to expect to happen in the regular basis, and what conditions would make it worse. So putting those people with impairments into very high competitive levels or any kind of a sports that can put them into a higher risk into developing any of these comorbidities. I think PM&R doctors are way more prepared. That doesn't mean that it's only PM&R doctors taking care of these athletes. Currently, it is more of whoever is interested. A lot of the biggest part of sports medicine is taken by family medicine. So a lot of family medicine people would take care of them because they're just like the sports doctor in the area, or because they have some kind of interest into the adaptive sports. But when specific issues happen with the prosthesis or spinal cord injuries that happen with the specific diseases, they usually don't know what to do and they need further training. But PM&R doctors are way more prepared, and usually we know more about adaptive sports as well. So I would say PM&R doctors are definitely the better prepared physicians to be the team physician or the athlete physician, but it's not necessarily the case because they're not as cool or globally interested to the regular physician. So it still requires a lot of just whoever is interested into volunteering to cover them.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I have one if nobody else has one. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Well, so I was just curious, given that you've obviously been on the residency interview trail fellowship, what differences did you see in the opportunities available for adaptive sports kind of across the country, especially since like all of us are in very different parts of the country now. So I'm just curious. I know what we have here in the Bronx, and I feel, lucky that we have a lot of opportunities, but I'm just curious what you've noticed about other places.
Yeah, I have more because it is my special interest. I have more of a knowledge on like the fellowship and what fellowships offer in the sports medicine, and it's not a lot. So a lot of programs don't offer adaptive sports. And the same thing happens with residency. So if it's something of your interest, I would look for resident programs that have some involvement into adaptive sports. But if it's something that you think you like or you want to try, I wouldn't limit my residency training into who has adaptive sports to offer. There's a lot of adaptive sports offers within the community. A lot of the state park and recreations nowadays have a adaptive sports program, so you can get involved in that area. Achilles International is spread throughout the US, so they have different chapters. There's a New York chapter that we built the Bronx chapter with them, but they have Connecticut, they have Boston, they have DC, Philadelphia, and throughout the East Coast. So if you want to get involved with them, you can be a volunteer, a guide with them. And there are many more other adaptive sports institutions or federations that are in desperate need of volunteers. So you can do adaptive boxing, you can do adaptive Zumba, you can go to different hand cycle clinics, and just Google that within your community if that residency program doesn't have what you want. But definitely I would say the New York area has a bigger offer, and even some of more specific ones like adaptive surfing and things are like really interesting. A lot of the up high states have adaptive skiing that they use a lot as well, so you can get involved that way as well. But all of this, and you can go to like Paralympic.org or USA Team, USOPC, which is the US Olympic Paralympic Committee, and they have the list of all the sports, and you can contact them to see if they want any volunteers within your area. And I would highly recommend you do so, because you get to experience their different impairments and disabilities and actual like ability levels, so what they can actually do despite the impairment they have, by being involved. And then you're going to go into like your inpatient unit, or you're going to see your patients in the clinic. You're going to be like, oh, I saw an amputee like running a marathon. Like, come on, you can do this, right? Like there are options. So you will have that. And you can also, by being involved, you can also tell parents, like, it's safe to go hand cycling with your kid. You can actually do it with them. There are tricycles, there's ways to share and be there to make it safe. And your kid can be out of home in being active and being involved with others. So I would highly recommend that, even if your residency program doesn't have that many options of adaptive sports themselves, because there are not that many. The community is in high need of volunteers. So within the area, you could definitely find where to join and help.
I just had a quick question about you brought up the hockey, and I thought it was really interesting about people being able to play with either able-bodied or non-able-bodied together and kind of be on similar playing fields. So I'm just curious, like in your experience, which kind of sports have you noticed that really offer that similar kind of opportunity, that are easy for people to kind of play with, all their friends at the same time, and like accessible? Because hockey might be hard for everyone to kind of be able to play. So I was just wondering if you've had any experience with that.
Awesome question. Yeah. There are many options, because you can adapt and modify all the different sports. But the easy one that I can think of that you can get a lot of people involved without breaking a little bit the rules, I would say, if you want to get more than 6 aside, is sitting volleyball. So it's not called adaptive volleyball, it's called sitting volleyball. So they're all at ground level. Everyone is sitting. The field is way smaller, but the concept is the same. You will have the net, you will have 6 people on each side, and then you practice the same volleyball passes, so 3 touches and it has to go through the net, and everyone needs to be sitting. So even just able-bodied people could play sitting volleyball, because the biggest rule is that you cannot stand up. So even if you can, you cannot. So you have to sort of like move, pushing with your hands and like sort of like moving your butt. So it's in a very easy way that doesn't require that much resources, but the net. If you think other ways, you can have adaptive tennis as well. So we didn't have that much adaptive resources at the beginning, and we would just have chairs. So we didn't have much wheelchairs, so we would just have chairs, and we would have people sitting in the chairs, and a lot of people on one side and the other side, and everyone would have a racket, so kind of racket distance, and then we was just like play tennis one side to the other. So that's more recreational than competitive, but still you can move. Zumba, same way. You can do Zumba or boxing just by having some chairs, and people can be standing or sitting depending on their ability level. So if they're able to stand, they can stand. If they get too fatigued or they cannot stand, then they can stay on a chair. And then people who can move a little bit more, they can move a little bit more, and you'll have the instructor being able to tell you those differences or how to modify that position in Zumba or that position in yoga as well, to have a big crowd to be able to do adaptive sports. So I would say sitting volleyball, tennis, Zumba, boxing, yoga. We've tried Tai Chi as well because it's very easy to do, gentle on the movement. It works with balance, and you can have a big crowd kind of like following one instructor, and even just fitness. So we have an amputee as a fitness instructor virtually and in person with just like water bottles, kind of like doing upper extremity exercises. And if you can stand up, then you stand up and you do it in one leg or the other leg. If you're an amputee, you can stand up, or you can use one leg, your good leg, or your a prosthetic leg, and or you can be sitting. So all of those things are very easy to do. The ones that require like specific sitting, like a specific sports wheelchair, that is a little more difficult, but all of the others you can do.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming to talk to us. I'll probably see you tomorrow. And thank you everyone else for coming.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. If you didn't get to see my email, I'll put it on the chat. I'm better at answering emails than phone or any social media. I'm super happy to try to redirect you if you're like, oh, I want to get involved, but I don't know how to get involved. Like, shoot me an email, tell me where you are, what you would like to do, and I'll help you connect. I think this is good for everyone. The more you get involved, the more you're going to be able to tell your patients what things they can do. You're like, oh, actually, I saw someone like you or similar to you that is doing this, and I think it's great. And you can get your family involved. Like my kids go play tennis and go Zumba and go do boxing with our adaptive athletes and with our patients that are just coming out of like the hospital. And it's great to see them, to see that wheelchair is not a weird thing, that that the prosthetics leg and arms are just super cool. So it just takes that inclusion part and that justice part of being involved in your community.
Thank you so much. This is incredible.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm happy to help and happy to get more people into it.
Awesome. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.
See y'all.
Bye-bye.